What's up, y'all? Devon here again for Obligatory, showing up for you weekly every Friday with a new music and music news recap. And the top story for today, Vince Staples versus J.Cole. The internet and mainly just Twitter spent a couple days this week debating and comparing the discographies, skill sets, and overall legacies of these two artists. Now, does it surprise you that Twitter was having a random argument on a Tuesday? Does it surprise you that Vince Staples' response to this was, y'all need jobs? But I would say the most common points of contention that people are arguing for or against comes down to a few pillars: discography, better rapper, consistency, and overall legacy. So I want to give y'all my breakdown on this on sort of a category by category basis, because there are plenty of people out there saying that there's nothing that Vince does better than J. Cole and vice versa. And I simply just don't think that that's true, even though I come down, I would say, pretty favorably on one side of this argument. Obviously, J. Cole is the more popular rapper who's been around longer and has a more widely accepted legacy in the grand pantheon of rap music. Now, you could argue on whether or not that is completely based on merit or just aura, vibes. The more prolific artist overall has to be J. Cole. And I do think that that means something in this debate. Now, when we talk about discography, that is where Vince Staples is taking the cake for me. And this is a very important pillar that I would base my argument on. I love albums. And to me, that just simply goes to Vince Staples. Now, he doesn't have a perfect discography. And that's not to say that J. Cole hasn't put out some great albums, because I do believe he has. But early Vince Staples, recent Vince Staples, and most of everything in between that has all been really strong. At a rapper, you might be surprised I think this, but it depends. Truthfully, I think this one, more so than the rest, is in the eye of the beholder. Because Vince Staples is a really solid rapper, but it's not in his persona to try to be a super showy or flashy rapper. J. Cole, on the other hand, does like to put a little bit of fireworks into a verse, particularly a guest feature. Personally, I have never listened to a Vince Staples verse and face-palmed afterwards, or thought something that he said was cringe. Like, actually, But overall, especially in recent years, Vince has been a lot more consistent, I think. When you look at who is the more adventurous artist, who is the more dynamic rapper, that is also Vince Staples, because I think he doesn't get enough credit for potentially the midsection of his career where he was branching out and doing a lot of different and just arguably flat out experimental music that wasn't completely perfect, but was panning out in really interesting ways. I think back to the Big Fish Theory era, some of the songs he's done with Kendrick Lamar during that time, working with artists like Sophie and Flume. There's just a lot that Vince Staples has done over the past decade that I don't think he gets recognized very widely for. All that to say, Vince Staples is vastly underrated. This is basically a drum I've been beating for a while now that I think it's a great opportunity to speak on, given that we're having this conversation. Now, feel free to let me know down in the comments section, of course, what your opinion is on the matter and what you think about how people try to debate the legacies between two artists like this. Moving on to other top stories from this week, we did get like a sort of Frank Ocean update, and I don't want to overhype it because it's really just not much. But Michael Uzowuru, whose name I just never really say like super confidently, an interview got released with him this week that also includes like a portion where Frank kind of called in and talked to the interviewer. Now, the nice thing that you can infer from this interview coming out and hearing what they had to say is that they are currently working on music. And to be honest, from my viewpoint, it seems like Frank Ocean has always been making music on some level and probably has been building a significant vault to this point since his last album release. It's been several years since he even released a single, and despite the fact that the buzz has been pretty much zero over the years, I do think this is an update worth keeping in the back of your mind. Also wanted to talk about Westside Gunn teasing the next FLYGOD is an Awesome God project via TNA Wrestling. If you know pretty much anything about Westside Gunn, you know wrestling he's a huge fan of. Different eras, WWE and F, and he's made plenty of appearances on TNA and AEW as well. And with that came a couple of snippets. One is called Chocolate Face, and it features DJ Khaled. TNA is actually using this one for a temporary theme song in some capacity. And they also teased out another snippet featuring Stove God Cooks. Now, I also wanted to note that the FLYGOD is an Awesome God mixtape series to this point has been one of my personal favorites as a really big Griselda and Westside Gunn fan. But the thing I've come to love about this series is how it has in the past bent towards some of the most unorthodox, I would just say avant-garde in terms of the production and the beat selection for both of these projects. I think to beats like Pete's sake. So I've always liked the spice of variety that comes along with this mixtape series. I will say the first two snippets that we've heard so far, they sound to me more like Hitler Wears Hermes 8 type beats, but we'll see what the rest of the project shapes out to be. And this will be the first Westside Gunn album mixtape project in quite some time. On to some more rapid fire stories. Everything we talked about today, by the way, is linked down in the description. I wanted to share with y'all a article that I read titled Inside the Stressful Life of a Concert Festival Organizer. Interesting article. If you want to know more about concert festival logistics, it is incredibly intense and demanding and is pretty much a year-round cycle of renting equipment, scheduling with talent, vendors, volunteers, and everything else. Definitely worth a good read if you got time for that. And then I also wanted to shout out the Bob Dylan biopic trailer that just dropped, titled A Complete Unknown. Of course, this is the one starring Timothée Chalamet. This looks really awesome so far. It is being reported that Chalamet has done his own singing for this film. If it is solely him, without a lot of like movie magic and post-production, this is incredible. It is one of the best depictions that I have seen in a movie, and judging by the comments, people are pretty excited about what they have seen so far, even if they are big Bob Dylan fans. Next up, I also wanted to give a shout out to Sagan Lockhart, who was somebody I talked about in a video a couple months ago, based around a potential 2010s era Odd Future photo book. And it seems like that has come to fruition, as Sagan Lockhart, a former manager and photographer for the collective, is sharing his debut photo book that contains not just stuff from Odd Future, but Mac Miller stuff and early Vince Staples stuff, Flying Lotus, guys like that. Very, very cool. I was looking forward to seeing some of this, and I do think that this is a bit of a piece of history. And so if you got the money to spend on it, I certainly encourage one of y'all to do that. Moving on to the new releases of the week, this whole section I'm presenting to you a little bit differently than I have in the past, but I was like pleasantly surprised by the Ice Spice album being fun. And we're also getting albums today from DJ Mustard, Porter Robinson, Rakim, Frat Cloud, and more. Again, a little all over the place, but maybe just a little bit of something for everybody. Singles this week: Enum Claw, Spirit of the Beehive, Sophie. We got that posthumous Sophie album coming up very soon. Raven Lenae featuring Childish Gambino, Young Nudie featuring Metro Boomin, and more. Albums announced this week. I would say it's not the most prolific week, but we are getting the deluxe of Casey Musgrave's most recent album next week, as well as Navy Blue just announced his next project, Memoirs and Armor. So moving on to albums releasing next week. We have those. We have an EP from Moses Sumney coming, a new album from Khalid. Smashing Pumpkins are back. They have kind of a new lineup now. Just another week till that Raven Lenae album I'm very excited about. Logic, King Gizzard, Mavi, Ray Khalil, Big Sean, OCs, and more. Albums the rest of the year, plenty to look forward to. And September is usually the most prolific month of any year for album releases. And so I'm suspecting through the month of August, we're going to get a lot more album announcements. And from there, we're going to be getting towards the end of the year, but still there is a lot to look forward to. And that is our show for the week. So if you got to this point, first off, I just want to say thank you for getting to the end of our videos. Second, clicking the like button on this video is probably the best way to make sure we show up in your feed the next time we drop a video. Dropping a comment is great as well. So till next week, till next Friday, see you then.